All right, welcome to the Integrated Rehab and Performance Podcast. My name is Dr. Nick Curtis, and today I have Jesse Grimes from Vanderbilt Legends Golf Professional. Jesse, thank you for taking the time to come on the pod and your busy schedule there. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, how you got to Vanderbilt Legends, your golf background, and some of your accomplishments there.
Absolutely. So I am from, as I always tell people, I'm kind of happy when I get asked that question because I feel extremely blessed to be where I am. I am from as middle of nowhere, Alabama, as middle of nowhere, Alabama gets. So I always tell people St. Stephen's is a town, but it's about an hour north of Mobile. Middle of the woods, grew up a mile back in the woods, barely had any neighbors, that kind of ordeal. Graduated with 50 kids in my class. So used to the quiet town life, but I kind of wanted to get out of there. So once I graduated high school, well, I guess I'll start with golf. Golf, I played baseball for a while. I played up to Little League, so that was kind of I don't even know if you could necessarily call it a love. I played it to play it.
Mm-hmm.
I played everything in the schoolyard, loved playing football, but played a few weeks of football in school, but football just wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I'm a 6'2" pencil,
Yeah,
so as you
gotcha.
can imagine, that doesn't go very well with football.
Sure.
Um, but nonetheless, picked up golf, started playing competitive at 10 years old, and kind of fell in love with it from there. Played it ever since. So going on, shoot, I guess it makes 16, 17 years now competitively. So went from there, went to Mississippi State. They have what you call a PGM program, which is available at not too many schools throughout the U.S. It's sadly dropped in the past few years. I don't know, I can't remember exactly the number it is now, but basically you can get a college degree while you get your PGA
Yeah.
membership. So I did that, went there and got a marketing degree as well as my PGA membership, and then came up to here from there. So I've been in this area for about 5 years. Went to worked at a place called Troubadour, which is in College Grove,
Yeah.
for almost 3 years, pretty much 3 years. Opened them up, and then came over to the Vanderbilt Legends Club from there. And so during my schooling, you have to do 16 months of internships. And so with that, that breaks down into three different ones. So I worked at a club called Craft Farms Golf Resort, which is down in Gulf Shores, Alabama on the beach, and then Mountaintop Golf and Lake Club, which funny enough is where I met my wife and also worked for the same boss that I work for now.
Mm.
So everything has come full
Yeah.
circle. And then finally a place called Willow Point, which is up in Lake Martin in Alabama, so it's on the lake there. And then yeah, been at Legends Club for almost 2 years. Been the assistant pro here. Do basically anything and everything. And then this year I've gotten really much more involved in the section.
Mm.
So for people that don't know the PGA, I guess you can kind of think about if the NFL was one team, your divisions are your sections, and then within your sections you have chapters, which you could consider the teams. So I've gotten much more involved in our section, which is the Tennessee PGA section,
Yeah.
trying to create new programs and help our other assistant pros throughout the state here. So I've enjoyed doing that and getting more involved. So that's kind of where I'm at and where I've been.
Yeah. Very cool. Very busy. Um,
Yeah,
I
a lot going
I'm
on.
curious about this PJ membership that you earn through the program there at Mississippi State, right? Um,
Mhm.
what does that look like? What are the testing? What sort of qualifications do you have to get through before you get that membership?
Yeah, so it's changed even since I've been in
Uh,
there. I'm trying to get caught up so I can help everybody else because you can do it that way, or you can do it just by enrolling in the associate program, which is a way that you can do it without going to school. School is not the only way you can get your PGA membership, of course, but for me, at that time, everything is basically integrated into your college curriculum. So you literally take your PGA classes just like you take any other class that's part of your hours at school.
yeah.
And then under each class, you'd have to pass a test in order, and it's a pass or fail test. So if you get 70 or above, you're clear. If you get below that, you had to do it again. And the PGA was known for trying to trick you a little bit in these
Interesting.
tests. I don't think they do it near that much anymore. I hear it's a lot more quiz involved. You take one big test at the very end now, so it's changed a ton since I've been in school. But yeah, they would make things very. It's one of those typical like memes of all these look correct,
Sure.
but which one is the most correct type thing.
Yeah.
So it would get a little annoying. But no, it's cool. I mean, they teach you a lot about the business. You take business classes for it. You take level 1 teaching, level 2 teaching, all that good stuff, golf fleet management. So it goes through the whole shebang, and then you have to do a big project at the end of your time there to finally pass and get your PGA. Well, technically, you don't even necessarily have your PGA then. You still have to apply after you get out of school and be employed somewhere for a month to fully get your PGA. But no, I enjoyed every minute of it, and that way, if things ever do go to crap, I have a marketing degree to fall back on as well from taking all my other classes there. So, no, I enjoyed it a lot. And Mississippi State has a lot more small town feel, which is what I was used to. So, I wouldn't trade my time there for the world.
Gotcha. Is there any practical classes that you have to pass during that as well? Is there any like on-course evaluations like that at all?
So you do seminars, which I guess you could call probably what you're kind of leaning towards. So seminars happen each level. They'll have somebody from the PGA come in. Basically, it's 2 days worth of going over everything that you learned within that level, and doing a lot of on hands teaching and some club repair type stuff and that kind of stuff. So yeah, they do bring somebody in from the PGA to specifically do what you learned hands on, so you can get more of a feel for it. I do think there's a lot of room for improvement, but like I said, I've been out of it for a little while now, so I don't know how much it's improved or went downhill. But I would like to see a lot more of the hands-on if I was in control of that personally. So
yeah, very cool. I find it fascinating the process there. It's kind of a unique thing.
Cool.
Well, cool. So your time at Troubadour and then your time here at Legends, how have things changed since you've really started working? In terms of your philosophy. So I'd say in terms of your coaching philosophy, the way you go about things, where's that at now? How has that changed from when you started? What are some things that you've kind of picked up along the way?
So that's a great question. So I'll start that by talking about it's amazing once you get into the golf industry how you can easily realize how different, you can almost say ecosystems there are at different golf courses. So Troubadour and Vanderbilt Legends could not be more night and day different. It's kind of amazing. So it took me quite a bit of adjusting to get used to Legends Club coming from Troubadour. So Troubadour is owned by a company called Discoveryland, and they're probably up to close to 30 properties now. They're very much a laid-back leisure type company. Their sole No, I won't say their sole desire. They've changed a little bit, but their most desire is to sell property.
Right.
So at Troubadour, you have to own a lot to be a member, and then pay an initiation fee, and then your membership dues. So it's a whole lot of money that goes into it. So it's very high class, but at the same time, like you can play without shoes out there. You can play with your shirt off out there. Yeah, all that jazz. So that's what everybody knows them for. So it's just a very different atmosphere. I would almost be willing to say their golf is second, just having a good time is first. I love it, and to each their own with that. But I love that there's honestly a golf club for everybody. If that's what you want, there's Troubadour. You go there. If you want more of the golf focus thing, you come to Legends Club. If you want the really high end golf focus thing, go to Richland Golf Club. There's something for everybody. But so over there, I did a lot more. I don't even know how to describe it. It's a lot more just keeping people happy, personalization, talking to people. Not quite as much, and I think it's changed a lot since I've been there. It sounds like they do a lot more instruction now. I came in so early that we were so focused on just getting the club built up. There was so much construction all the time.
I see.
So much going on that not even quite enough members early in the get-go that golf instruction wasn't a huge ordeal. So I didn't do quite as many lessons there for sure. And what I did, I learned as I went for sure. I wouldn't say that I gave great lessons, sadly, all the time there. And that's just how it goes with golf instructions. You got to give some bad ones to learn from them. And so as I've gone to the Legends Club now, like for instance, I would probably say my last year at Troubadour, I probably did, I don't know, 25, 30 lessons, like over the course of a year, which is not a lot. To this year, I'm already over 150 on this year at Legends Club. So I've grown in that aspect a lot. My boss, Micah Hicks, has been a big help. Our director of instruction, Joe Hallett, was PGA Teacher of the Year this year. for the entire United States.
Wow.
So
Oh.
it's been good to hear from him and have encouragement from him
Mm-hmm.
and just have him push me along. But I would just say that my teaching has grown just the more I've done it. Mike kind of came in when I first got there, just said, "Hey, listen, this isn't how you have to teach, but this is how I teach, just so you have
Yeah.
some way. If you're looking for a step by step, anytime somebody walks in, you've got something to do. This is what I do." So I kind of started there, and then I've kind of molded as I've gone. Like with beginners, I would say that my top focus is getting them just to understand what we're after. So may not even be too much hitting in a first lesson, but I want them to understand what would we call a good shot, what is good contact with the golf ball labeled as,
Mm-hmm.
what is that attributed to between the golf club and the ball. Of course, like a downward angle of attack, hitting the ball first and then the ground. Um, so just having them understand that and then say, okay, so when I start telling you X, 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 it's all to get you back to here. We're trying to get a square club face down into a golf ball with an iron, of course. But just starting there, because you'd be surprised how many beginner golfers that took a lot of learning as well, just understanding how a beginner golfer thinks.
Yeah, no
Because
doubt.
there's different levels of beginner. You can have a beginner that watches a lot of TV and they know golf. Then you have a beginner. I had one guy walk in. He's like, "I don't have clubs," and I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And then I was like, "So do you know what each club is?" Nope.
Wow.
So like, you never know what's going to walk
Yeah.
through the door. So I spent most of that first lesson. We just went over ideas of golf. What does
Of
each
course.
number on this club mean? You
Mm-hmm.
know, what is a par? What is a bogey? So you kind of adapt as you go. And I'm still, Lord, I'm not an expert in teaching by any means, but I feel like I've gotten a whole lot better, and I enjoy doing it. It's a very gratifying thing to do. So. Yeah, but I like to start there, and then of course you'll have your more advanced people that we're getting more into positional aspects and
Mm-hmm.
depth, and where's your club face at this point in the swing? What are you doing on the downswing? That kind of stuff. But if as far as maybe a philosophy, I attribute a lot to depth. I think depth is a big thing that helps people. So how much our hands are getting back in the swing, or are they just staying very steep and
Mm-hmm.
out in front of us to where we're not able to make a good turn on the way down because we got to make stuff happen. So I attribute a lot to getting depth and seeing how a student reacts to getting X depth. You know.
Right. Yeah, and that's such that tends to be a big thing with that feel versus real, where
Mm-hmm.
it can be such an uncomfortable position initially, working into more of a
Oh yeah.
deep position like that, where it just feels it can feel so forced for a lot of people, especially when their natural swing will tend to be more of that steeper swing. So I
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and be like, hey, let's get in this position here, and then
Yeah.
go from there. But yeah, that's
Honestly, one of the funnest things to do too is when you just tell somebody a beginner to turn. It's fascinating what each student's idea of a turn
interesting.
is.
Yeah,
It looks different every time.
yeah,
And they're like, "Oh, I'm turning here," and no, you haven't moved at all. You just picked your arms up.
right.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that. So
Yeah,
it's cool to see how each different person thinks.
absolutely. And I see that a lot in what I do with global movement screening. So it's one of the first things we do with any patient or client where I want to see how their body decides to move in certain key movements, where we're using multiple joints
Nice.
and segments to create motion. So an example of that might be like multi-segmental rotation, where we basically just have someone standing straight up, feet together, and then I want them to rotate as far as they can around in one direction and then the other. So they're using everything from their foot, and one foot's doing pronation, one foot's doing supination. Their tibia is rotating, their femurs are going to rotate, their pelvis has to rotate on top of that. Their
Hmm.
rib cage, thorax, neck, head, everything's rotating, right? And
That's right.
how they decide to do that. Do they inherently flex or bend at the hips when they start to rotate? How far can they rotate? Obviously, is a big thing. And then lower extremity versus upper extremity. How much of it's coming from that upper extremity versus everything below it? And do they even think to use that pelvis and the foot and everything that's happening there? Do they bend their knees inherently? Things like that. So that's always something we take video of to show them like what's really going on, and then record that towards the end treatment plans and things like that, where we can see all the mobility improvements but also movement strategy stuff. And so same thing
Hmm.
like you're saying, you say, hey, give me a little bit more turn. It's like, where's that going to come from? What are they going to
Yeah.
decide to
What does that
do?
mean?
Uh,
Hmm.
and man, you just have to get through all that stuff to make those changes right with golfers when you're working with them, because imagine how impossible things would be if you're not even speaking the same language, right? And
Oh,
you're trying to get them in certain positions, and they don't know which parts to use to do that, or what that actually feels like. So do you record and use video in your sessions at all? Yeah.
absolutely. So we don't have, sadly, the technology we have isn't able to do or if it is, we haven't used it yet as far as like a voiceover sending the student. I can send the student their swing,
Hmm.
but we've never done like a voiceover sending to the student,
Yeah.
sadly. I'd like to get into that, but no, I use video pretty much every time to show a student what's going
Yeah.
on. And
I use
that's
I use OnForm for that, and it has all that built in where you can
okay.
use a voiceover, just hit record, and then it records to whatever you're using to get the audio. But
Nice.
and then you can draw on it, and do all sorts of things like that. So could recommend that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then I'll even use that. I did that yesterday with a patient who's finishing up a plan of care, and I did that with that multi-segmental rotation and some TPI tests that we did, and then some even more specific testing where we took video day 1 and then session 13 and 14, and got to describe all those changes and things like that. But so yeah, that's great that you're using video even just to show this is where you're actually at compared to what you think you're at, and depth is a big one for that too. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, you're not getting nearly as deep as you think you are. I have to ask, for Vanderbilt golfers, there's so much more. Do you find that you're working with so much more competition, people that are kind of more ingrained in the competitive nature of golf? You're working with college golfers there. Are you working with people that used to play college golf more so than you were at Troubadour? Are you finding that your teaching is more geared towards people that have that competitive background?
So we don't have too much. We help the golf team, definitely not really in a swing regard unless they come specifically asking us for it, which is
Right.
rare. The team kind of does their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say 90% of my lessons are intermediate to beginner.
Yeah. Cool.
Um, Not that I don't think more advanced would trust me with their game, um, but honestly, just across the board, I don't see because we have some good players at our club, but most of them don't, at least don't hear. They don't ask for
Yeah. I
lessons. I
see.
don't know if, I mean, I know the way I am with my game at this point is I try to figure it out on my own. So I don't know if most of them are that
Sure.
way.
Yeah.
And I like to figure it out on my own, try to figure out what's going on. But yeah, definitely more. Yeah, I would be very willing to say 90% beginner to intermediate
Yeah.
at the club.
Gotcha. Um, Now, Vanderbilt hosts a lot of big tournaments there. What's it like having
Mhm.
things like the Corn Ferry and other like PGA events? I think the ladies PGA has some events there from time to time, if that's true. Um, what sort of things have you seen when those events come to town? What's it like having that sort of attention there at the club? And what kind of access do you get to those golfers and the things that you're seeing?
So the LPGA no longer has anything with us,
Gotcha.
but we do a lot with. Sorry, my cat is trying to get behind blinds. We do a lot with college. So we host Vanderbilt and their men's and women's golf teams tournaments, and then of course, yeah, we did the Corn Ferry. I think all those are very cool. And surprisingly, because a lot of the times with that kind of stuff, especially the Corn Ferry, we were very concerned because that's a entire week of
Yeah.
two courses being shut down to the people that are paying for it. So, as you can expect, we get some not happy campers.
Of course.
But overall, I think it was very cool, and I think even the members found it very cool to have that atmosphere there. They all got free tickets to go watch since they were already members here.
Gotcha.
Sadly, the weather wasn't the
That's
greatest
right.
this year, which hopefully will improve next year, but it was still very cool to see of course, they shot honestly not as low as I thought they even would, but still nonetheless 20 under one.
Right.
So it's pretty cool to see these guys just rip apart your golf course that you struggle to
Of
shoot even
course.
par on at any given day.
Yeah.
Um, but no, it's very cool and having that atmosphere. Surprise, we didn't know what to expect, so we really didn't have too much involvement. I would say we had a lot of involvement with the pro-ams before, but as far as the tournament itself, that's all Corn Ferry. They run their whole shebang. We're just there answering
I
some
see.
phone calls in the shop and then taking turns going to watch. So it's kind of a cool
Yeah.
week for
Fair
us
enough.
to get to check that out.
I
So
like it. Now, what does it take to be a champion there at Vanderbilt Legends? Whether you're a Corn Ferry Tour player coming down to play at Legends. Now, do they typically play the same course, the one that's a little bit more geared towards more competitive play? For that course, what does it take to be good there, to be a champion for you when you're going out and you're going to play at Legends? And it takes something to be good here as opposed to other courses, or even just for the members that are there. What does it take to be a great player there and win some like member or member guest tournaments and different things like that at Legends?
Yeah, to start kind of what you mentioned with your question, sadly, the course we would want them to play is not the one they play.
Oh, gotcha.
The South course is the harder of the two, but logistically for TV and all that kind of stuff, it's just too hard to pull that off. Without being there, we have, let's see, how many holes is that? Like 7 holes that are on one side of railroad tracks, and then the cart path fully converges, and you have to cross over those railroad tracks for like TV and that kind of stuff purposes. That logistically hurts things a lot, so we couldn't pull off getting things over there. Especially this year, we're having a full clubhouse renovation, so they didn't even have a great home base to work out of. But with that being said, I would be willing to say short game and knowing where to miss are the big keys to scoring out at Legends. Some of the greens can be pretty vicious, especially when they're quick, and if you're missing in the wrong spot, you're making it nearly impossible on yourself a lot of times. We also, our grass is getting on the older side, so without going too much into that, every time, no matter what, you're going to have Bermuda invade. It's just the most invasive grass down here in the southeast, and it's impossible to stop without just ripping everything up and replanting. So in our rough, you can get mixed lies, which I know one of the caddies even mentioned from the Corn Ferries, like that gets a little awkward. You'll have one lie in the rough, on this hole, and then the next you've got a completely different one. So that made it tough on the guys. So, I mean, anywhere hitting the fairway is going to help. But, yeah, in that regard, I guess at this point hitting the fairway is becoming a little more important. But you don't always have a terrible line in the rough either, so it can be hit or miss. But I would say more having a good short game and knowing where to miss are the things that are going to help you out the most.
I see. Very good. When it comes to legend golfers that you're working with, and this year you had mentioned about 150 or more lessons that you've already given. In terms of pain and injury, what are some things that you're seeing that golfers that are coming up to you, maybe they're complaining about something or even limiting them from continuing to take lessons or play? What are the things that you're seeing most often in that regard? What areas of the body are bothering them, or diagnosis, things like that?
Yeah, so I think, of course, your most common, I know even Tommy mentioned it, it's lower back. That's always going to be the case. I think throughout me getting more knowledge and stuff too, I think a lot of that just stems from, and this will be more your expertise than mine, but stems from just lack of core strength to where their pelvis, works out from under them and starts to pull into their back too much. And they just don't have the core strength to maintain a good posture all the time. And then I'm sure throughout their swing, they start to compensate somehow or really thrust and have some crazy things going on that just aggravate that pain even more. So yeah, I think lower back stemming from lack of core strength is the biggest thing I see. I feel like lately, surprisingly, elbows has been a funny one. I've heard several come in talking about elbow pain. What I don't know, some have said they went to another course where they had old mats, and as mats get older, they get really hard underneath, so it's just constant just banging against it feels like a wall at times. So I'm not sure if it's that related or if it's, of course it can be. Some of these people aren't even my students. They just, said, oh, I've been having some elbow pain lately, and it just gets my brain to thinking. So I don't know if these are people that attribute to getting very steep. So yeah, they have way too much ground contact and it's just too much concussion on the elbow. Or if they're just really extension oriented to where they're almost hyperextending, that elbow every time. But I have heard a lot of elbows lately. And other than that, you got your typical older gentlemen that don't have great knees, or a lot of lack of hip mobility for sure is a big one. So whether it be, getting them a little more duck-footed and opening up their feet to try to get a little more turn out of them, or whatever the case may be, getting them set up a little more closed to try to get the club a little more deep. So just little stuff like that's the main stuff I see. I'm sure that's the most common things kind of everywhere. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that the low back, you make a great point with core strength. Another big thing really is glute. So the glutes, they almost do the same thing to the pelvis, where the core will help keep it from tilting too far forward and that anterior tilt like you had mentioned. that core can help kind of pull it up, but also the glutes can from the back pull it down, which does that same thing as it reorients that more towards a neutral. And then it's really important not to stay out of this. There's times you want to stay out of that. It really comes down to being able to be into both when you need to, right? And it kind of moves throughout that swing. So core strength, glute strength and awareness, and then 2 is just motor control. So being strong enough, but also knowing how to use it into that swing.
Yeah, when to use it.
Yep, and so those are 2 big things that I definitely especially work on. And also, you had mentioned elbows. Funny enough, Jude, who's on the previous podcast that's coming out on Monday, Jude Lenahan down there at the Grove, I had asked a similar question, and he was saying, yeah, low back, definitely, but I'm also getting a lot of wrists and elbows, because a lot of members down there at the Grove might have some simulators too, or they have access to a lot of simulators. We're hitting off mats, just like you had mentioned, and the mats, it's a little bit more of a firm contact, that concussive force, like you had mentioned, and it almost might encourage more of a, an impact into that mat, right? Something about it, right, is kind of encouraging, almost changing your swing a little bit, encouraging you to do that, because you can kind of get away with it if you do it too much. But you also make a great point with that extension, because that golfer's elbow, what is causing that is it is that extension motion, but it's that quick bit into flexion there. So as we're extending that and those muscles and tendons are lengthening, and then we quickly flex, if you're familiar with like eccentric contractions, where we're contracting that muscle, but the muscle is still lengthening. So think you're holding something really heavy, but it's too heavy for you to hold, and you're working really hard, but it's still winning. Those eccentric contractions are, they can do a lot of damage to the muscle, more so than any other type of contraction. Now we can use that to our advantage in training, because we want to damage muscles so that it builds back stronger. But that repetitive eccentric kind of load onto those tendons in the elbow in that motion there in that golf swing is what ends up causing that golfer's elbow, which is a tendinopathy, essentially. It's where those tendons are just, they've kind of reached their point of chronic inflammation at that point. So yeah, funny enough, you had mentioned that same thing with, I think it's coming from hitting off mats, and that can encourage that more so than if you're hitting off grass on the range and things like that. So
what are you doing for rehab on that?
So when it comes to tendinopathies of the elbow, loading is really important. So first we have to get things to kind of calm down a little bit. We always make sure we take a look at what other factors might be in play. So really we're looking at the entire body still, because say you have an over-the-top type swing that is encouraging more of that impact. Well, we're not just trying to help that elbow now. We also want to give you the opportunity, give your body the opportunity to not come over the top. And sometimes it takes a physical changes to make that process easier. If they're, say, I use this example a lot, their shoulder can't get it into that externally rotated position. And when they go to turn to come over the top or into that downswing, it might drag that shoulder with them, and they can't maintain that elbow down here because of the shoulder. And so what they think they're doing, they're not actually doing it. Whether it comes from, like we talked about, the hips. Well, if the hips aren't, they're not mobile enough, or we don't have the motor control to control them, then it's going to make stopping that over-the-top mechanism through your lessons that much harder, because their body physically, it isn't able to, or it's going to have to fight your lesson the whole time. Their body's going to be fighting the things you're telling it to do. So we want to help that elbow pain. So we're going to work on the elbow specifically for the tendon, decrease inflammation, and then you have to build it back up with, funny enough, load. So eccentric load, isometric first, where there's no lengthening, and then slowly controlled and strategically eccentrically loading it enough to challenge it so that it can build back up, but not too much just to re-aggravate it. So it does take a strategic approach. But beyond that, we also want to work on everything else that, again, is kind of the root cause, because it's coming from a swing characteristic that is encouraging more impact there at the elbow. Right? So we always make sure we take a look at the entire body and then work on whatever needs to be worked on to get there. And then when they're feeling a bit better, they come back to you, and they're a lot more capable of doing the things that you're desperately asking them to do. It's important to create a swing that is individual, specific to the individual. I'm sure you're not trying to make everyone look like Tiger. Everyone has their
Yeah,
own things, but there is still a most efficient swing for that person, and the people aren't coming out of their 9 to 5 as they're capable of their
yeah,
best, right? So there's always things
that's
to
right.
work on that can improve their game when you get a hold of them. So just making sure that they're able to do all those things that you're asking them to do, and then you can kind of go from there. But so that's a great question. What do we do for elbow tendinopathy? Just about anything, whatever's required. Specifically for that elbow, though, it is strategic loading of that tendon. It's
Is that a lot of just ice for the pain though, and that kind of stuff?
If it's killing them, then ice for pain tolerance. Otherwise, stay away from ice. That inflammatory
Yeah,
process is playing a role that we want to let play out, and eventually, we want the inflammation to do its thing. Now, there comes to a
yeah,
point where we can't keep inflaming it to the point where it keeps flaring up. It becomes a acute tendonitis into a chronic tendinopathy. So that's something we want to avoid. Or if it's already at that chronic stage, then it changes our treatment plan, and we have to be, the strategy changes a little bit, but overall, it is the same, the way we load that up.
gotcha.
So we have kind of that acute phase, and then subacute, and then the chronic. So yeah, ice for pain tolerance if it's really killing them. So they, if they don't have to take Advil, that's always better. But otherwise, we're
Hmm.
even staying away from ice if it's not completely necessary.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, you had mentioned this earlier, creating depth in that swing. Is that the big
Hmm.
thing in terms of swing kind of characteristics that you're seeing? Is it mostly an over-the-top thing that you're seeing as the main problem most of these golfers, or do most people, have they watched enough YouTube now to they've tried to work that out of their swing enough that it's just something else? Low back pain is the big thing you're seeing with pain, some elbow stuff, but in terms of pure swing characteristic, like what is it that we eventually are working on with just about every golfer? What might that be?
I would say the lack of depth is a big thing we get to. I wouldn't say it's the first thing. I think the thing that plagues beginners and intermediates the most is a lot of them go so long without golf instruction. So, for instance, I think the biggest thing is club face, simply put.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of the times you'll see either somebody, I think more often than not, you see it more open than closed, but I'll see somebody take a club back super open on the way back, and they've discovered a way to recuperate that and find a correction on the way down. So, whether that be coming over the top and shutting it to try to get it back
Right.
online somehow, or shutting the face super rapidly on the way down, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I kind of tell everybody when they come in, like, my idea for you, of course, yeah, like you said, fit it to what they're working with, but we need to find the way that we're not having to correct near so much on the way
Right.
down, because that's 90% of them are. Some of them will even get it back pretty darn well as far as body position, but because their club is so far out, then on the way down they lose that body position trying to fix the club and hit a decent shot, because that's their main goal. They're not thinking about, oh, my body's in a good spot, I don't need to change that. They're like, I'm gonna do whatever the heck I need to do to get a ball to go somewhat straight.
Right.
Um, so yeah, just getting. I have found that just getting the club face in pretty good positions throughout somebody's swing helps tenfold. And then from there, as they get a good feel for where their club face is,
Yeah.
I worked with a junior yesterday. That's all we did. I've been working with him for a while now. All we did was the whole lesson. The whole lesson, I would say, okay, I want you to aim straight at this flag, but I want you to hit it left of it. So how are you going to do that? And it took him a while, but we finally got to, okay, you got to turn this club face down. So we spent the whole lesson just him becoming more and more aware of where his club face is, to the point that at the end of the lesson, he hit a bad shot, and I said, okay, well, what was that? Oh, I'm guessing my club face was probably really open or something. Yeah, probably so.
Right.
So what are you going to do this time? I'm going to close it more. Correct. So once you can have a student just be aware, because ultimately that's what our job is. We're a teacher. Okay, we're not I'm going to put you in this position, or,
Mm-hmm.
I want them to understand what we're doing and why a certain shot may occur.
Right.
So when they're out on the course, they're not just going to panic and create a whole new swing to try to fight that one
Right.
miss. They're just like, oh, okay, I guess my club face is a little open, so let me turn it over a little more, if nothing else this time. Not saying that's the end all be all, but I think just having a student become much more aware where their club face is throughout their swing pays
Right.
dividends.
Yeah. No doubt. And I was looking over the new ball flight rules, right? All, that have changed a little bit over the years, and it's all about club face, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
checks out, that it's the hardest thing to control or have great feel over is, of course, the most essential part of
That's
what
right.
the result of the swing. So yeah, it can be finicky working on that club face and making that, that's kind of the end all be all. At some point, that has to square up a little bit unless you're shaping it, and it still has to be precise. So
Yep.
not easy stuff, and thank you for the work you do there.
Oh,
I want to ask you personally, what do you do, or what experiences have you had in pain or injury in golf? Any chronic issues that keep popping up, or stuff you've experienced in the past that you've had to work on?
Um, I would say I've been very blessed. I cannot recall having any kind of injury
Nice.
that has just kept me at bay throughout my golf
Mm-hmm.
career. Just in my personal life, and I need to get it checked out. It's a little hard headed on my point at this point, but I've always had, I've had really bad knees. I don't know why. I've always been a more chicken leg kind of guy. Sadly,
Sure.
I was one that I worked out a lot in college. My buddy was really into working out. We worked out a ton. I would do leg workouts and stuff. I even, did the whole drink protein powder thing, but it's like I could never really get my legs to grow very much
Mm-hmm.
to the point that even a year and a half ago, it was the most bizarre thing. I was at the golf course and was locking our door just to lock the shop, and all I did was turn to walk away and dislocated my left knee. I didn't even make a sharp move. I didn't feel like I did anything crazy, and then I looked down and my kneecaps on the left side of my leg. So um, I would say that's the only kind of injury thing that I've had issues
Yeah.
with throughout the years. Like I said, I still haven't necessarily solved that mystery and why stuff like that keeps happening. My knee used to pop out of joint as a kid. I'd have to pull my leg
Wow.
out till it would pop back in.
Yeah.
Um, so I've never really figured out why that kind of stuff happened throughout my life, but thankfully nothing necessarily golf related.
Gotcha. Well, good to hear that they haven't restricted your ability to swing and play golf and walk 18 or do things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But yeah,
Yep.
that's pretty intense. I'd love to
Yeah.
take a closer
Weird.
look and see what's going on there. Um,
Yeah.
Other than that, what are certain things that you've experienced in your kind of golfing career that has been one of your more things that you're proud of that you've accomplished? Does it have to do with the schooling? Is there any tournaments that you've done that you kind of comes to mind?
I've always been, and I will always be, as far as I know, a competitor.
Yeah.
I want to play tournaments, and we could dive into for a while. I was always one of those people that like you see yips, and you're just like, man, what's wrong with these people? Like, come on. Um, but then this past year and a half, I have had the worst golf of my life. I got to a point all of a sudden where I would take the club up and I would have no idea how to get it down.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hit a golf ball 45 degrees straight to the right.
Sure.
So I've been battling that and the mental, whatever you want to say of that. It's been an interesting fight. But before that, I had the pleasure of, I got second in our Tennessee PGA Assistants Tournament. So I got to go play in the National Assistants Championship down in
Very
Florida
cool.
a couple years back, which was a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
Did not play well down there, but nonetheless, cool opportunity. But this year in particular, like I said, getting more involved in the section has
Yeah.
been something I've been really proud of and enjoyed. I got to start a new, I guess you can call it initiative slash program called the mentorship circuit this year that I've kind of put all my heart into. So basically, like I said, you have chapters throughout the section. So we're in the Middle Tennessee chapter. There's a Memphis chapter, Tri Cities chapter, Knoxville, and Chattanooga. So we go around. Well, I say we. It travels around to each chapter, and what we have is two mentors that host six assistants slash people that are trying to get their PGA, and they just go play 18 holes. So the mentors can pour into the young guys, and the young guys can ask the mentors any questions they want in a relaxed setting to where it doesn't feel like something that's just
Yeah.
created and not natural. They feel like they're in a more laid back environment to where they can actually ask these questions and get to know these people.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
I've had the pleasure of getting that going, and we're still going with that, hoping to hit Memphis this month, and then I believe we're going to try to hit the golf club in November, and then maybe one more in December for the year.
Very cool.
Um, But even besides that, I've had the pleasure past couple weeks helping out with PGA Hope over at Tennessee Golf House, which has been a pleasure. That's the PGA's program to teach veterans. Um, so I've had a blast doing that. We'll wrap up this session next week with their graduation, so we'll get to go play 9 holes and play a scramble with them, which is fun. And then just being more involved in general. I've tried to make myself as much available and involved as I can this year to kind of push myself to my limits, and of course that comes with a price. It's had some tiring days and some days where I'm sure my wife would have been happy to have me home earlier, of course. So I'm not sure how much I'll continue at this rate, but nonetheless, I'm proud of myself for kind of giving it my all this year, and we'll see how next year goes.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then just to finish off, in terms of Nashville golf, and let's start with Legends actually. Have you identified a hole on either of the courses there that is the most challenging hole for you based off kind of your swing and your typical swing faults and things that you work on? Is there one hole on that course that you would identify as the hardest for you?
Good question. Maybe. I think I don't necessarily know that I have a specific hole. I do struggle, especially right now with, like I said, the mist that I have. I hate when I feel contained. My golf game is not sharp enough to stand on a tee box and know that I can't miss a specific direction. Most of the time, I would say that is right that I don't like right now. So if there's a hole with OB right or a hazard right, and there's a couple out at Legends, for sure. On the south, there's 12 and 14. On the north, number 4 plagues me. It's one that's longer. It's got a creek running up the middle that you gotta poke it to get over it, and it's not super wide. Hazard on both sides, so I have struggled dearly on that hole lately. So until I can get myself back in a comfortable state, I would just say any hole that you tell me I can't miss right, to put it simply.
Gotcha, fair enough. I think a lot of people identify with that. I know I do.
Yeah.
And then any other courses around Nashville that you remember playing and being like, that one hole is, it seems for me it's like the hardest hole in all of Nashville. Anything that comes to mind there?
Not necessarily. Troubadour is not a super hard course. It's a super nice course.
Yeah.
Discovery prides themselves, as they should, in putting forth the best possible condition, and they do so. It's a very nice course, but it's more member friendly, so there you have a lot more leeway to miss certain directions and that kind of stuff. But 10 on the south at Legends is probably one of the harder holes in the area for sure.
Yeah.
You've got a landing area up till probably, it's like 280, but no matter what, unless you can hit it 350 over it into a very tight landing area, you're going to be left with 175 at best in to a hole that's got pond all the way down the left, kind of an awkwardly shaped green where you got to hit a really good shot to have a decent chance at birdie, and then if you're missing in the wrong spots, then you're having a hard chance at par. So it's definitely one of the harder holes in the area, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome. Well, Jesse, thank you for coming on and sharing your golf and history and some of your knowledge and experience. Really do appreciate it. Eventually, we'll have to play around and maybe film some more podcasts and get some more of your insights, and maybe you can fix me up a little bit too. But
Sounds good.
Until then, again, thanks for coming on the podcast and taking the time. I really do appreciate it. We'll do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick.